it is my absolute honor and privilege to introduce our speaker, Rachel Gooen, today. She is a consultant and licensed social worker based out of Missoula, Montana. And she was actually referred to me by another consultant we have worked with in the past who said, "You've got to meet Rachel. She would be so fun for Nonprofit Cafe." So we are deeply grateful that she said yes when we reached out and asked her to do this session. She's an experienced facilitator in leadership, team dynamics, and strategic growth. And we are just so honored to have her here today. So all of that being said, I will turn it over to Rachel and we will dive in.
Hello, everybody. So nice to see you all. What I would love to do to start off is I would like everybody in the chat to just let me know what organization you work for. And so if you can just type your name in and your organization, that would be great. It also helps other people in the group get to know each other a little bit. The other thing is I am going to request, like, if you have your video off because you have low streaming and it's really hard for you to have your video on, then that's okay. But if you can put your camera on, that would be really great. Today we're talking about culture, and part of culture is working with people and seeing people and who they are. And so if it's possible, we don't care if your background is messy, if there's kids running around, if there's puppies and kitties, if your hair doesn't look perfect, that's really okay, because this is real life and this is who we are. But I just love to see faces, and I think it's really important, particularly for the discussion that we're having today. So let's see, we have a lot of great organizations here. Dee is from REACH, and Michaela is the MSU Alumni Foundation. Claire Hodges, Bozeman Health Foundation. Everybody could take a little peek here. Brandy, Childcare Connections, Anne Swan World, Anne Swan, the World Language Initiative, not Anne Swan World. Maybe it was a little hyphenated there. Mitch is from the Gateway School Foundation, Marielle, the Morningstar Learning Center. God, such great places. Jennifer's with One Valley. We have Big Brothers and Big Sisters here. Jenny is from there, and Big Sky Country. Tracy, the Traveling School, which is a fun program. Price is from the Montana Healthcare Foundation. Jennifer, the Museum of the Rockies, which I went to for the first time last year for my birthday. I wanted to see dinosaurs. Abby is from the Dotted Eye. Hi, Abby, welcome. Maria is from Thrive. Dee, no problem. No camera on your computer. That's not a problem whatsoever. Appreciate your saying. Family Promise of Gallatin. That's where Michelle's from. Mark is from One Valley as well. Jill is from One Valley. Kristen is from the Montana Ballet Company. Lovely. And Sarah is from PERC, and Anne is from New Tech Network. Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you all. Today, we're going to be talking about culture, and I'm going to start my presentation. And with the presentation, I am going to give you guys what I call a connection creator. Okay, we're going to start to build connections with each other. So your connection creator, and I want you to think about this. If you were making a television series and you had to title it, what would your title be that represents the culture of your work environment? What would the series be called? And I want you to think about it. And when you're ready, you can type it into the chat and we'll see what people's television series are. Other television series that I couldn't find pictures for that I wanted to, were like Modern Family or Failure to Launch. Lots of different fun titles we can come up with. Just give you a couple minutes. All right. Kristen says Fame. Oh my God, I loved that song, that whole movie. Wasn't that great? And it was a TV series. It's definitely a junkie. I can sing the whole entire song, but I won't do that for it to you. Growing Pains, yes. Growing Pains, for sure. That is a great, great TV series name for your organization. What other names do we have? And Cheers. Oh, lovely. A Second Growing Pains. Yeah. The Good Place. Oh, I love The Good Place without there being it actually happened being the bad place. Oh, that's hysterical, Jill. Yeah, so kind of thinking about it, right? Like, what would your sitcom be? And when you're thinking about it, you can, and maybe for some of you that are kind of trying to come up with a name, it could be like, why did you choose that name? Like, who are the characters in your series? I feel like my business, and I work with a lot of different teams. We would definitely be Seinfeld. We would definitely be Seinfeld because there's always like these little nothing mishaps that happen or just kind of funky things. Lots of comedy going on. And when you're thinking about the name of your sitcom for your organization, you know, other things that can help you is like come up with a name is, what do you love about your organization? What kind of annoys you a little bit? You know, what would be your ideal work environment? So, you know, there's like, you know, different kinds of ways that we can think about our place. That's just kind of a little fun. Anybody else have any other names for their organization? It doesn't have to be, you know, I see some honest ones here, the Growing Pains. Could be like Dallas. I worked at one place, I swear, was like Dallas or Succession. You know, that was like the toxic work environment, even though everything looked really, really rosy on the front. And inside it was a little bit more cutthroat. It was a nonprofit also, which was really hard to believe. All right. So gonna talk a little bit about culture. And I want you all to think about this. Like, what kind of culture would you like to have at work? What would it feel like? What would people be doing? And how would it help you be your best self at work? This is actually what we're going to be talking about today, and where we're going to be kind of investigating this idea of culture. And culture, which is really important in our work life. And here's why. It's because it's really about people's well-being. Every day you walk into a place that you want to feel good at, right? You spend a lot of time there. And the environment that we are in, it actually creates how people think, how we behave, and how we interact. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is psychology, because that's what culture is. It's about every single person coming in and being aware of what's going on inside of them, what they would like to see, and then how can we co-create that culture? Culture is not the documents in our human resources, you know, materials. It's not the governance documents. It's not our mission. Culture is the tiny little details that we do every day. It's the when you walk in, do you say hi to people? Are you aware that somebody has something going on in their life, like maybe, you know, a parent that is ill, or a child that is ill, or a celebration that's going on? Maybe somebody's kid is getting married, or maybe, you know, their child is doing really, really good in Little League or something like that. Or someone's having an art show, right? Because we all have these other separate parts of us that we do. So often we have to do things to create culture that are not always comfortable to every individual, right? Because for a long time in our United States culture, we were told work is at work and life is over here, right? It's in the house, it's where you leave. but what we know is that we bring ourselves to all of this. And we are not two separate people, a work person and a home person. And when we are like that, there's actually an internal conflict with internally where you're feeling this pull and this struggle. Well, who am I loyal to? Am I loyal to my family or my personal life, or am I loyal to my work life? And I think COVID really did a lot to break that down, because people are really calling for, wait, I want to be able to enjoy it all. I want to be able to have this balance that is really special and important. So a good work culture kind of prioritizes people's well-being. And, these are some of the ideas that focus on well-being, right? A stimulating work environment, good communication. Is it visionary? Is it honest, positive? Is there creativity? Is there empathy and thoughtfulness? So I'm curious, and I'd like you all to do a vote you can just type it in the chat. Do you think you can influence, like you personally in your work culture, do you think right now, can you influence your work culture? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Fantastic. Oh, I love this group. Sometimes kind of, not completely 100%. So is anyone going to be brave enough and come off mute and let me hear, in what ways can you influence your work culture?
This is Dee from Reach.
Oh, we'll go Dee and then Marielle. Dee, what'd you say?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say one of the things that I'm conscious of is every time I walk into a room, if there's another human being in it, I smile at them.
Great. That is huge. Marielle.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm the executive director of my organization. So there are a lot of structural things that I can put in place in addition to my individual actions that can help influence culture. However, and the reason I said in the chat only to a point, my teachers work incredibly hard day to day. They're like working with children all day long, and I'm not doing that. And so there is that kind of separation. In terms of just like, I'm not doing the same thing that they do. So I do feel like there's a limit of how much I can influence that culture.
Mm-hmm. You can influence on their experience and how they have, like, what, I'm curious, what in particular goes on with their work that's different than yours?
So they're teaching children, and I am fundraising and working on finances and working with the board and doing all of these administrative tasks. And so and actually because our building is a bit limited and I don't have enough office space, I'm usually not even in the building to be influencing the culture. And so I try to be intentional about what I do when I am here and when I am interacting with people. But there is so much culture that just happens when you're in the trenches, so to speak. And I'm in a different trench,
Yeah.
And so I rely a lot on our teachers and like the leaders among our teachers to influence the culture in that way of like, when things get hard, are we smiling and like giving a little like wink at each other, or are we, letting our attitudes get the best of us kind of thing in a challenging moment? But
Yeah.
I'm just not there to influence that like on the ground.
Right. Yeah. I'd love you to hold on to that, and I think we'll come back to that later. Anyone else would like to share about how they feel they influence their culture or things that they do? Jennifer, I see you're off mute.
Sure. One of the things that I've noticed in our organization, and it's kind of large, but it had some big changes since COVID, and it's had a lot of turnover. But for a lot of people that are still here, one of the things I hear over and over is that's the way it's always been done. And I feel like when we have new team members come in, that my ability and investment in team collaboration to help create some meaningful change has been really, really important. And just starting to see some of that success has been tremendous. But I think, finding ways that each of the departments can interact, because we have, our education department, we have our exhibits department, and, our membership department and development. And so there's the store, there's guest services. And so trying to figure out the ways that all of us, how our job affects all of the other departments.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to find ways to collaborate as teams to create new programs or to create some meaningful change. So that's something that's really high on my priority list. And it's great to see the positive results when everybody tries to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, that phrase, that's the way it's always been done. And sometimes that phrase isn't even said. It's a quiet thing. I worked at an organization that was founded in 1976. And for some reason, things were still being done the same. And new people would come in and try to bring new ideas. And it wasn't even like the phrase was, that's how it's always been done. Those suggestions would get passed by. And you start to feel that sentiment. And then there is the overt phrase, well, that's how it's always been done. It's an interesting phrase to question, right? And to say, can we step back and think about that? Like, why is that? Is it working? Is it not working? Is it helping? How is it helping and how is it not helping? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jennifer. So culture, the way I like to think about it is that they're agreed upon behaviors and guidelines. And that part of agreed upon is really important because when people come into your organization, it's one, when you're interviewing them, you can share, here's what our culture is, and we can share what our culture is by sharing our values, how we operate, how we work, what kinds of activities we have, what accountability looks like. When you interview them or talk to them or they come in, you can give a sense of that, of trust even, and what trust means. But mostly people want to belong. Okay, that is an innate human thing. We all want to belong. And some people have a comfort or ease with belonging and other people don't. And that's human experience. And there's no judgment on it. It's just we all come from different places. But there is that yearning. And I would say that is the biggest component of what happens and what people are striving for. And it looks very different for different people and how they act this out. But so these are what I've found to be the biggest part. Now, the agreed upon behaviors part, and the way reason I said, well, when you have someone come into your culture and to your organization, it can be really important to have everybody sit down and look at and review, this is how we do things here. How does that fit with you? How do you work? What's your work style? Are there ways that you are doing things, have done things that maybe we might want to look at and see, does it fit with our culture? And if it doesn't, how can we adjust it? Because you chose that person because they were a good person and they had some skills. So I'm going to, as we go through, share with you some tools that I have to help groups talk about what their culture is and how to move forward. But that agreement part is really key and important. So to me, as I said, teams and culture, it's all about psychology. I started out working in environmental organizations in 1992, and I, after a while, started to notice that I felt like people were bringing in their home life into work and acting things out and playing out the scenarios in their lives that they necessarily couldn't do in their home life or in their personal life. And this was corroborated by research that I had done. And I thought, wow, if we're all like kind of arguing silently or jockeying for power, how are we getting done the work, the mission that we say we're supposed to do? And my role in groups was education, fundraising, and then executive director. And I felt really committed to the donor money that we were seeking, and I wanted to make sure we were doing it. But I started noticing this. So I went back to school to get a social work degree because I thought I got to figure out what this is. Like, I'm passionate about nonprofit, passionate about the environment, and I want to help people through this. And what I learned more and more, that it really has to do about personal motivation. And in order to understand why people do the things they do, and we are very, very complex, which is what's fun about us. And but there are some basic, and I'm simplifying this, okay, very, very much, but there are 3 emotional zones that most of us are jockeying between, okay? There's the soothe zone, there's the drive system, and then there's the threat system. And a lot of us hear about the threat system nowadays. I feel like COVID really has brought how we work internally out into the general public. So the soothe system is about bonding and recovery, right? So that's where we feel good with our friends, with our family, or if you're staring out at this beautiful vista or something just in a hammock. Like, I think my favorite is like swinging in a hammock with the sun on my face and you can hear the birds, and it's very soothing. The other bonding and recovery time can be, for me, and I don't know for you guys, but it can be a Dairy Queen ice cream. And I just love that. And then the threat system is what we've heard a lot about, and I'm sure people have heard a lot about, fight, flight, and freeze. That's where, you know, something's going on and you kind of jump and go to this thing. And what it really causes, though, is negative thoughts and emotions. And the purpose of the fight, flight, and freeze system is just about keeping you safe. And that is its total purpose. The drive system is really about seeking resources and building a community, right? And that's for our modern day selves, that's work, accomplishing things, building things, getting things done. And that really, it's an emotion also. It energizes and motivates you to take action. Now, we are constantly, every day, every moment, literally, hopefully for sometimes it's more like hour by hour, we are bouncing between these systems, right? So something can happen, you can hear something on the news, and all of a sudden our threat system is activated, even though we're sitting and working or talking with somebody, gets activated because it's something threatening to us. But then because we're doing something at work, we'll bounce into the drive system, right? That productive thing. You can also bounce into your soothing system. And that could be like you receive a phone call from a friend and in the midst of all this. So this is a constant kind of jockeying. Noticing, though, in yourself where you are is really critical to how you react and respond to other people in your environment. The other part of this is knowing that some people might really live in their threat system a whole lot more than others because a variety of things, what happened to them in their life, how their biochemistry is in their brain, where they think towards. Culture can be really challenging, right? Because having an activity that maybe you would like to do at work, and I'll get into the different areas that we would want to talk about, could be very threatening to people, right? We know conflict is threatening to people. No, very few people like conflict. I've asked this question a lot. I was working with a team of lawyers. Guess what? The litigators didn't mind conflict, okay? But most of the rest of us, we're just not exactly comfortable with it. We're not taught how to have conflict. we're taught that conflict is bad, not that it's a source for innovation or a source for creativity or a source for learning what it is that people really believe in and really like and what they care about. And most of us see conflict as when we are shown it in our major culture, it's a fight, it's a bad thing, right? Or you see people getting mad at each other. But so with the evolution of emotions, we are all, okay, we have these three systems, but there's one thing that we all have, and it is a lens that we call the negativity bias. So humans have not grown out of this evolutionarily, but what it means is that it's easy for us to see negative things and a bad thing when there's a whole pile of good stuff going on. That's just what our brain goes to. And we can overcome the negativity bias, but it takes work, okay? So you can notice the negative thing, but we also need to say, oh, and here are 5 other good things. Okay, our brain is wired to that. It's for safety, to keep us safe. Our inner critic is the biggest negative voice that we all have, and everybody has an inner critic. And there's a practice of being able to notice the inner critic and saying like, okay, I see you. Thank you for alerting that to me, but I'm going to go do this. Now, a lot of these processes are really important, right? They help us solve problems. I'm going to go, oh, come on, go backwards. They help us solve problems, right? So we feel a threat, and then our drive system, what we want is our drive system to interact so we can solve problems. And we have problems all the time in our culture at work. And that's why we're all in nonprofits, because we see a problem that needs to be solved. I'm not negating the importance of these, but we need to start to learn how to keep them at bay and even. There was a study that was done in England where they asked people in business, about 1,000 people, to draw how big their threat zone was to their soothe zone and their drive system. So right now, I'm not going to tell you the answer of how it went, but I want you to take out a little piece of paper and I want you to draw what's the relationship to your threat system, to your drive system, to your soothe system. Like how big would the circles be in comparison to each other? So just take a moment and do that. So because I'm asking you to do something a little vulnerable, I will disclose what size mine are so that you can feel comfortable. I would say that my threat system is usually twice the size of my drive system, and my soothe system is about half the size of my drive system, right? So my threat system is bigger than drive, and then soothe is smaller. And I work and work and work to try to get the drive bigger and the soothe bigger, right? So how about other people? Is there anyone that, if you feel comfortable enough to share, what size are your circles? And you can just type it in. People can actually just type them in the chat. And if you haven't thought about this before, maybe you'll take some time and start observing and thinking about it. So while you're typing, I'll share what they found when they studied the 1,000 people in business in England. The majority, like what they found was that the threat system was 3 times larger than the drive system, and the soothe system was like the size of a pea. So this is actually a normal human response and way of being. Yeah, drive and threat feel pretty equal, soothe smaller, threat is biggest, drive is medium, soothe is smallest. And, the thing is that where we really want to be all the time is the soothe system. And why this is important, this is often why we find it's really hard at times when things at work come up that we don't necessarily say, I would like it to be different. Because what we're striving for is this soothe system. So we just want everything to be okay, right? And one big part of work that makes it okay is we're getting a paycheck and we need that paycheck. And and the other thing that I hear a lot of in nonprofits is this altruistic, I have to work really, really hard because the people that I'm serving don't have things. And that leads to burnout. Okay. And that actually keeps you in your threat system, even though there's this strange psychology that you're doing it for good. And so that's soothing. And it's really not. And so we really have to be careful of monitoring these three systems and where they are. So in an organization, okay, we can map organizations out on this. Organizations that are in the threat system, they overvalue criticism, okay? They worry about losses a lot. It's a culture where people feel unsafe and they blame others often, and there's more conflict. Okay, car organizations are in this realm. Wall Street is in this realm, super, super competitive. But I have worked in nonprofits that felt like this also. Okay. And sometimes it looked a little bit different. It was, you're not doing enough. You have to work more hours. You have to come in and help with this event. You can't take time off because we have this mission, or we don't have enough money. And so you'll get comp time, but you have no time to take it. Okay, that happens a lot. And I would put that in this realm also. Now, when you have an organization that kind of has a lot of good drive, but not enough soothe, okay? And you can have this kind of organization, it bounces back and forth between the soothe where you get big bonuses or you get benefits or you get something to try to placate all the threat that's happening. In an organization that's mostly in drive, there's a lot of wanting, again, competition. We want to go faster. We want to strive for more. It is a bit of a me first. But when it's balanced out with more of this soothing of like we-ness, valuing, wanting to support each other, shared values, this relationship of drive to soothe can work okay. But what our goal is, and I know this is an idealistic goal, is we would really like to see an organization that is in the soothe center, knowing it can bounce into the threat or bounce over to drive, but underlying the culture, we want a we-ness. People feel valued, supported, they have shared values. There's a longer term goal, and it's a place that allows emotion, where it's not emotion of, where you don't want to come in and see everybody crying every day, but you want to see some range of emotion so that we know we are human and things happen. So this is a study and a group out of England that works on this and has mapped organizations to this. Does anyone have any questions so far? I'm talking a lot, which can really be easy to do on Zoom, but I'd love to see if there's any questions or any comments, or do you resonate with any of this? Okay, well, if you do, just pop it in. Okay, so this is a map that I created, and it's called the Pro-Social Individual Culture Map. Okay, because as I stated, I believe culture starts with each and every one of us, right? And I don't know if any of you've had there's like one really person in the organization who just is always super pleasant to be around, or funny, or, you know, kind of a jokester, or just some component. They can really shift things. And as some of you said, you really can have an effect on your culture. But so this thing here is I've broken areas out that I think are important for people to think about. And so the best self is you thinking about, what is my style? Like when I'm really, really good, what is my style? What are my strengths? Okay, thinking about your growth mindset. Growth mindset is really about where's my learning edge? Where can I strive for? And so thinking about what are my 3 learning priorities, right? And so you would work on these like bits and pieces over time, coming up with rituals. How do you stay intentional? How do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of your team? And so those could be celebrations, they could be morning walks, coffee talks, whatever that might be. Thinking about being compassionate. Now, compassion is actually empathy with an extra step of then helping somebody. So it's noticing that something is going on for someone and then stepping in and doing something about it. Empathy is noticing and being able to say to someone, I noticed you're going through this. But that compassionate step is when you step a little bit further. So thinking about, how will I practice compassion? Are there times compassion is hard for me? Are there times it's easier for me? Coming up with, what are your core values? And I think of values as behaviors, not domains, like valuing family as a domain, valuing science, which I hear a lot is domain, valuing community, that's a domain, but valuing authenticity, honesty, striving, openness, achievement, those are behaviors that you can do and that you can achieve. You can move towards them and they can challenge you. Thinking about your norms and practices. So what are behaviors that I expect of myself? How do I keep myself and my team engaged? So these are just kind of, again, norms and practices are more about like ground rules or what are things that we do. Behaviors, thinking about this of like, what behaviors do I want present around me, and what behaviors do I not want present? What behaviors do I want present? And it can be good to outline those, because then you can think about, how do I act upon them and how do I help them, or talk about removing them. And we hear a lot about psychological safety nowadays. So psychological safety is really about being comfortable enough in your work environment and with other people to know that if you share something, you're not going to be bullied, belittled, told that you're bad. Basically, you're going to feel okay sharing ideas, and that the idea sharing is seen as participation, having candor in a way that is helpful towards coming up with new ideas or thinking about things. So it's really being able to have good dialogue, which is something that we have lost a little bit, the art of dialogue, where you put an idea out here and then you talk about it and you look at it to say, you know, what really is going on here, without attacking each individual for having that idea, right? So there's that difference. And so looking at psychological safety. Now, the big part that is in the center that drives you is like, what's your purpose? Like, why am I here? What is my quest? So thinking about that at work, and then having these surrounding things kind of support you in that. Then there's a guiding word and a power word. And I think of your guiding word as sometimes people come up with a word of the year. And so it could be making decisions, having intention, whatever that would be. But your power word is the word that makes you feel really strong inside whenever you're challenged with things that come up for you. So I know that I have been chatting a lot. So I'm going to have you all in a moment go into a little breakout room, but I want to show you one other thing before you go into a breakout room. So this is kind of a really big organizational map that can take months. Well, this is for an individual. I also have it as an organizational map that you do with your team, and it has a few different things, and I'll go over that. But what I want you to do, I'm going to share something different. Actually, I'll just stick with that. What I want you to do is to take a little time and think about your mindset. Okay, what does the role expect of me? What do I expect of my role? And what do I expect of me? So there's a difference with the first question and the last question. What does the role that I have expect of me? What do I expect of my role? And what do I expect of me? And I'm going to give you a little time. We're going to break out into breakout rooms. And then I'm going to have you share this with each other. Sorry, I was reading the chat. I got a little
Rachel, do you mind giving me an example? Sorry, this is Bridget. Do you mind giving an example, like modeling this for us maybe?
Oh, most definitely. So what does the role expect of me? Okay, so when I was development director, the role expected me to build relationships, bring in money, and train my staff and board on how to raise money, right? That would be basically what the role expected of me. What did I expect of the role? I expected the role to help me, connect me with people in the organization, to have a really good database, for the organization to be willing to let me go travel to see individuals, to build those relationships, to have a budget in order that I could host membership events so that I could really bring the money in the way that it needs to be, which is all about relationships and education. Okay, that's what development work is, relationships and education. And what did I expect of myself? What I expected of myself at times was to be okay with 9 no's because I was waiting for that one yes. I expected of myself to be able to go into a room where I didn't know anybody and just walk around and say, hi, I'm Rachel Gooen. I work for National Audubon Society, and I really care about blah, blah, blah. I noticed that you care about that too, or whatever it is, right? I expected of me at times to be brave enough to tell my director, if you don't give me the money, I can't raise money, right? Which there are times where, and not necessarily at National Audubon, they were really great, but there are times in certain places where they were like, can't give you the money. And I was like, well, so I expected me to be brave in all those ways. So does that help, Bridget? Great. Any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to put you in a breakout room to think about these and to share. And, we're going to be in there for about, let's do about 8 minutes. And so Jill, actually, if you can do breakout rooms of, looks like maybe 2 or 3 people.
We can do that. I also just want to note, if you are in a shared office or you are driving your kids to school, or for whatever reason you cannot jump on the breakout room, feel free to stay in the main room with me. We don't want to lose you just because you can't do a breakout room. But if you're willing to hang tight for 8 minutes, you're welcome to stay in the main room as well. But I will go ahead and make those breakout rooms. And then perfect. You all should have invitations to join your breakout rooms. So we'll see you in 8 minutes.
All right, so I would love to hear if anybody would like to share. If you're more comfortable typing in the chat, feel free to do that. But what did you discover when answering these questions?
I'm happy to go. This is Bridget.
Hey, Bridget.
I'm with One Valley Community Foundation, and I got the privilege of actually having a teammate in my session. So thanks, Jill. And then we had another partner, Trace, in there, and both of them are do operations for organizations that they work for. And so it was just really interesting to hear the commonalities of the expectations that they had of themselves, how similar they were versus me. And it was actually a little bit different. And so it was just really interesting how roles sometimes can play into the expectations of ourselves and others. So I really appreciated the opportunity to get to hear from them about their own expectation of themselves and the organization.
Yeah, can you say a little bit more of what you learned about how roles play into the expectations?
Yeah, they had articulated, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, so they're welcome to respond to this. But they had mentioned just like the expectation of efficiency that they have of, both of the women that were in my breakout group are highly effective women. And so I think they had high expectations of what they could get done. Whereas my response was, I expect myself to have a lot of self-compassion around learning and evolving as a leader in my work. And so it was just interesting hearing the differences, but the similarities between the two of them was interesting.
Nice. Did anybody else want to share? Okay. Thank you for sharing, Bridget. One thing that I want to point out is my statement that I have over here on the side, which is the heart and the head are always present. And what I mean by that is with mindset, often we have, and I think of the heart is really important. And I think of that as kind of what goes on inside of us and messages and things that we've learned of who we are since we're childhood. And so often in mindset, there are parts of us that can drive us, that can be useful, but sometimes are not useful anymore because it's an old voice. Mm-hmm. And we hear that often, like, I'm not sure what the overtone of efficiency was in their jobs, but sometimes that's a pressure of efficiency rather than, can I learn to have a process that I feel is efficient, but not give myself the pressure to have to get it done very quickly because everybody's waiting on me. And so then there's like, where's that voice coming from? So I really do believe it's a combination. And I've witnessed that in people. So I'm not going to have us go through this, but when you will be getting the pro-social individual canvas. But culture starts with you doing your individual work and everybody doing the individual work and then coming together as a team to fill in the team canvas. And so these questions are really important, which is, why am I here at work? What makes work meaningful for me? What does my best self look like? What does that look like and I'll be giving you a worksheet. I'll show it to you before we end to help you get at your best self. And what do I want to contribute? Right? Not just to the team, but to the cause and to the mission that I'm working for. And so asking yourself these questions and thinking about them can really help shape culture. And it can help you identify, is this the correct culture that I want to be in? Right? And can I change it? Can I not? What are the challenges? So now this is the pro-social culture design canvas. I'm using the word pro-social. Are any of you familiar with that term? Okay, so yeah, Jennifer Owens she shook her head up and down. So pro-social is about behaviors that move you towards the betterment of the good, right? Working towards the good. But we can have pro-social components for ourselves also, right? Whether we're choosing good things that are helpful to us versus unhelpful to us. But thanks, Jill. And so, but pro-social is actually a organization and a theory by two. One is an evolutionary biologist and one is an organizational psychologist that have come together to create a pro-social process. And it's based on Eleanor Ostrom, who was an economist and an anthropologist researcher who looked at what helps humans protect the commons. And the commons is air, water, land, you know, things that we all need as humans to live. And her work got a Pulitzer Prize, and she basically came up with 8 different things that have to happen in order for groups to be able to work together. And that is what now we've combined to be the pro-social process. And so it's looking at fair and inclusive decision-making, the group having a shared purpose, the group being able to handle conflict, the awareness of what are helpful and unhelpful behaviors to the group being cohesive. How are you going to organize yourself? When do you get good feedback? How do you function as a group? Is it safe to be in that group? And so this is a canvas that I created, breaking down their higher level core design principles of pro-social into things that we can understand and actually act upon in our day-to-day working life. So having your group come together to design your culture of values, what do we believe in? And I give groups a sheet that has about 62 values, or I hand out, like I have these cards and I give, ooh, they're not gonna be able to see them, but I give the group different cards, and on there's like gratitude, independence, open-mindedness, reciprocity, justice, safety, trust, honesty, integrity, all these different things. The group decides what are the team values, and then they're not just values, remember, they're like, how do we behave? Like, what do they look like? How do we act them out? But what is our shared purpose? We're each here for different reasons, which is why it's important for you to do the original work yourself on why am I here? So that then you can look at and say, okay, how do we all come together? How does all our shared purposes and why we're all here match into this bigger purpose? But then it's really important to think about, how do we do decision making that's fair and inclusive? So when earlier I was talking and I said, it's really important that everybody has agreement on this. When I work with groups on this, I work with the staff and the board together because it's one organization. I know boards technically are separate from staff, but here's another one of my little nonprofit, after 25 years in this world, it's one organization and the staff are the experts, and the board, the way the boards are now is really they're volunteers that have been given a responsibility that sometimes is outside their expertise, unless, you know, like sometimes they're there to be a lawyer or a marketing person, but it's different than when nonprofits were first created, which was they really funded it and let the staff kind of do what they wanted to do. So I work really hard to get the staff and board all together as one, to be understanding the shared purpose and having the same values so they can treat each other fairly and justly and see everyone as an equal, because you are equals. So it's important to think about, how do you convene meetings? How do you give feedback? What are your rituals? Like, what are your organizational rituals? And those are, do we celebrate birthdays? Do we have coffee Fridays? Do we have fun things that we do? How do we recognize everybody in the morning? How do we, you know, recognize someone doing something good? Like, whatever those fun things are, Psychological safety is really important to talk about. How do we encourage everyone to speak up? Again, the behaviors are similar questions, but then I added for this canvas, how should we respond to one another to encourage cooperation and discourage unhelpful behaviors? Okay, and so in your individual thing, you've looked at what are behaviors I'm okay with and what are behaviors I'm not okay with. And it's important to talk about them. And then looking at the norms and rules, how can we be aware of what each other's doing? How can our behaviors be transparent? So, as I said, this culture design can take a long time to create and take a long time to do. It's also really delicate because of those zones, those emotional zones that I shared with everyone. We all have different feelings around talking about this stuff. So it's really important to do it in a way that doesn't push people into the threat zone or allows people an escape or a way to recover from when they feel nervous about something. And it's also important when I talked about the biggest part of culture is belonging. It's also important to help people feel that their voice belongs in this conversation and that they belong to this organization, including the janitor. I'm working with a group right now who I'm teaching them communication skills, and they excluded the janitor. And when I did the survey, it's the janitor that they have the problem with. And I was like, why didn't you bring the janitor in here? But they're not seen as a part of the group, but they are so a part of the group. So we really have to think broadly. Any person that's in your organization or is paid and interacts can be valuable and is important. So I think this is really critical. People do not experience your intentions. They experience your behaviors. Okay. So you can have good intentions. You can care about people. You can say, I'm kind. You can feel that someone, that needs help, or that they did something for you that, oh, they know that I'm grateful to them for doing that, or they don't know it. What they know is your behavior. They know that you're going up to them, reaching out, talking. And behaviors are what you think and feel and what you physically do. Okay. Thinking and feeling is an internal behavior that you do for yourself. This comes from behavioral science that I kind of use as my framework. And why we say that they're behaviors is because they motivate what you do externally in the world. So often our internal thoughts and feelings are our intentions, but other people don't see them. I would love to hear from you all what you think about this, what it would, not just this phrase, but about the culture canvases, questions that you have. Okay, I'm going to share with you a couple other tools then that I have. I'm happy to keep sharing tools. Oh, great, Jennifer. Okay, so I'm going to share a couple other tools that I have that I give to folks. This is just a little easy kind of cheat sheet that I made to make sure that you're having a compassionate conversation. And I kind of have you like stay within the circle. And it can be hard to do all of this, especially when you're rushing or feel pressure or have lots of different things going on. So sometimes it's really good to take time, say, set up a 15-minute time a day when people have conversations, or, kind of block time out in your schedule. But I think this is a really nice little cheat sheet. And often we say, I don't do these things. Great place to practice and catch yourself is with your family. we do these things all the time. And I find that practicing with my family helps me get better at it at work, that kind of thing, because your family or friends, it's the hardest place, right? So if you practice at the hardest place, you're going to really have flying colors. Here is an instruction sheet that I call, did it flip, Jill, to the new sheet? Okay. I designed this and it's called Know Thyself and Relate to Thyself. And it's an activity I give to teams when I work with them. And so basically you're looking at these different petals. What work hours do I like? What setting do I like? What kind of support do I need? What do I expect of my team, or what helps me feel close to my team? What's my work style? What are the challenges that I have? And so I have people answer these and then share them with each other. And they're basic things that we don't share with each other, but it's really critical. This one guy said, everyone thinks I'm just staring at my computer screen. But that's how I think. I'm actually thinking, I'm not zoning off. But so I have a lot of questions here to ask yourself, what do you prefer? When are you most productive in your work hours? We are not all productive 9 to 5. I don't know if any of you feel that. I will say I've adapted over the years, but when I was in college, I did, even in high school, and I did really good work at night. My brain did not work till about 3 p.m. And how I got 2 master's degrees and a graduate, whatever, blah, blah, who knows? Because I've learned this about myself. I work much better at night. Now, granted, that doesn't always work, but sometimes adults adjust that, right? Some people say, I just can't think in the morning. Don't expect me to have really hard meetings in the morning. But here I'm good during these hours. But it really can help. What kind of support do you need? What makes a great team member? What do I need from my team? What do I find challenging? Being organized, project management. We all can't be good at these things, and yet we go to work and we're expected to be good, especially in nonprofits, at pretty much everything. And then the last thing, if you don't have time to do the culture canvases, I have a friend works on commercials and movies, and he gave this really awesome talk. And he said that there are 3 really simple rules of being on a movie crew or being a director. One is you protect whoever's in front of the camera, meaning, you let them know if something could be better or if it isn't right. You tell them how they can look better, and you do it with kindness, But I loved that. Like, you're there protecting your colleagues. You respect the person when they're on camera. You respect their choices. You respect their authenticity. You respect how they're doing things because it's their choice. They're the one having to do that. So at work, that can translate to, and then you offer it up. You offer something up. And these are the 3 rules they go by. You offer up something to improve it or to improve a solution. So those are the 3 rules for a movie camera team, but you guys can come up with 3 rules for your team. What you would like and how you would like to act, and what they would be. So this is kind of like a little simpler version, but I think it's pretty great, and be like, what will the 3 rules of engagement be for our team? So.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you for sharing all those resources. I am going to send out a follow-up email to the group with all of those resources. So if any of those sparked your interest, just know they are coming your way, so you don't have to reach out and ask Rachel to send them to you individually. I will make sure you get both canvases and all of the resources she just went over.
Thanks
Rachel,
so much,
that was
everyone.
awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Before we sign off, y'all, I just want to say a big, big thank you to each of you for investing the time today to come and learn with us. And a big thank you to Rachel for volunteering her time to share her expertise. So yes, absolutely. Big round of applause for Rachel. I also just want to remind everyone next month's Nonprofit Cafe will be in person at the Bozeman Public Safety Center. It will be with Beth from Haven and Nathan from Bridger Care on utilizing AI in our nonprofit marketing and fundraising. But I will send out Rachel's contact information and her website if you have follow-up questions for her. And thank you again for joining today, everybody. We so appreciate you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone.